I use borrowed cameras from time to time. I just recently shared with you a review of the Leica CL, which was lent to me by Leica. I am currently using the Sony Alpha 7 R3, which was lent to me by Sony, and I'm filming on right now. Review on that soon. But I was asked the other day about what I do when I receive a new camera. How do I set it up? How do I do it? Do I have a process so that I'm able to hit the ground running with a new, to me, camera? And I do. So in this video, I will share the few settings changes that I always make and the things that I do to initially get to know the camera. I'll show you the settings changes on the Sony Alpha 7 R3, but really these settings aren't unique to Sony. This stuff is what I do when I receive any new camera, including ones I've purchased. But before I get into that, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace has long been the platform that I recommend the most to viewers who want to build an online presence. Whether you want to choose one of their templates and just fill in your own information and photos, or you want to customize your site down to the fine details so that it is completely unique. You can actually see how I built a photography portfolio site on Squarespace in the video linked up above. Try Squarespace for free and build your own beautiful website by following my link in the description below, squarespace.com/snapchick. When you use that link, you will even save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So the first things I do when a new camera's in my hands aren't really settings. I get the lens on, I get the battery charged, and I insert a memory card. And then I'm able to check out the buttons and the dials, make some changes in the menus. Now, if I'm using a used camera, as the Sony is because it's a loaner, the first setting I find is the reset option. I do a reset of all camera settings. You never know what changes someone else may have made in the camera that could wreak havoc on your process or your results. Then I format the memory card and I update the time and date and language and such. So before we dive into the menus more, there are things that I will need to adjust depending upon my situation. Drive mode, exposure mode, focus modes, white balance, aperture, shutter speed, ISO sensitivity. So those are going to be different every time, but in doing so, I'm really starting to get to know the camera, and if I'm new to the brand, I may be starting to get to know new terminology. Okay, so into those menus. I am going to definitely look at the file format. Do I want to shoot in RAW, in JPEG, or in both? If I plan to shoot video, I will need to dive into resolution and frame rate. And here's another important thing. How am I viewing everything? With this camera, which has an electronic viewfinder, I need to decide how I want to see my scene. I typically want to use the electronic viewfinder rather than the LCD on the back of the camera, but depending on what it is that I'm photographing, that might be a different decision. Along those same lines, I typically turn image review off. If I want to review a particular image, I'll just press the playback button. If there is a wireless function, I am probably turning that off completely. It tends to drain the battery, and if I'm not using wireless, I just don't need it on. Now I'm definitely going to look for sounds. I want them all off. I don't want any sort of focus confirmation beep or anything. And last, many cameras have some sort of favorites menu. I like to customize that right away with a few things, which will definitely depend upon the camera. These are things that I think I will want to adjust quickly, but don't necessarily have a button or dial on the camera's body to do so. One of the things that I find helpful to put on this type of menu is auto ISO settings so that I can choose the minimum shutter speed quickly. So that's it for the settings changes that I make immediately when picking up a new camera. Now, that isn't to say that I won't make any additional changes to the settings or won't want to change the favorites menu in the future. In fact, I often make changes to how I use the camera from outing to outing. If this video was interesting to you, I recently shared with you a video where I talked through the settings I used on the Leica CL for an afternoon at the museum. I went more in depth about the specifics like aperture and shutter speed, and I shared photos too. You can see that video at the link that is somewhere next to me. Before you go watch that video though, I'd love to know what you do when you first pick up a camera. Do you make similar settings changes to me, or more changes or fewer changes? Let me know down in the comments. And make sure that you are subscribed and such, because my full review of this camera is coming soon. Thanks for watching, everyone.